The Loop on Highway 50. Marcus Webb had been driving long-haul routes for 23 years, and in that time he'd crossed every major highway in the continental United States at least a dozen times. Highway 50 through Nevada, the so-called loneliest road in America, was one of his regular runs. He knew every truck stop, every rest area, every peculiar landmark along that desolate stretch. On a cold February night in 2019, Marcus learned that familiarity means nothing when reality decides to break its own rules. He'd left Salt Lake City at 6 p.m. with a full load of industrial equipment bound for Sacramento. The weather forecast promised clear skies, and Marcus felt good. His rig, a 2017 Peterbilt 579 he'd nicknamed Big Blue, was running smooth. He just had the engine serviced, new tires on the rear axles, and his CB radio was picking up chatter from other drivers scattered across the Nevada darkness. Everything was routine, predictable, safe. Around 11 p.m., Marcus passed through Ely, Nevada, stopping only long enough to fuel up and grab coffee. The attendant, an older man named Roy who Marcus had known for years, mentioned the roads were empty tonight. "Quieter than usual," Roy said, which struck Marcus as odd. Highway 50 was always quiet, but Roy made it sound like something more than the usual emptiness. Marcus shrugged it off, paid for his diesel, and rolled back onto the highway. The road stretched ahead like a black ribbon under his headlights. No moon tonight, just stars scattered across the sky in concentrations city folks never got to see. Marcus liked this part of the drive. The solitude felt clean, uncomplicated. He adjusted his seat, turned up the heater a notch, and settled into the rhythm of the road. His GPS showed 247 miles to his next planned stop in Fallon. 4 hours, give or take. He'd done this drive so many times he could practically do it blind. At 11:47 p.m., Marcus passed a distinctive landmark, an abandoned gas station with a faded sign reading Desert Rose. The building had been empty for at least a decade, its windows boarded up, rust consuming what was left of the old pumps. Marcus always noted it because it marked roughly the halfway point of the loneliest stretch. From here, it was about 90 miles before the next sign of civilization. He drove on, watching the white lines disappear beneath his truck in hypnotic succession. The CB radio crackled occasionally with distant conversations, but no one was close enough for clear communication. Marcus hummed along to a Johnny Cash song on the radio and checked his mirrors. Nothing behind him, nothing ahead, just the way he liked it. At 12:15 a.m., Marcus passed the Desert Rose gas station again. He blinked, glanced at his GPS, then back at the road. The GPS showed him 28 miles past where the Desert Rose should be. But there it was, identical to before. Same boarded windows, same rusted pumps, same faded sign barely visible in his headlights as he passed. Marcus felt a cold thread of confusion wind through his chest. He must have been more tired than he thought. Maybe there were 2 abandoned gas stations on this stretch, and he'd confused them in his memory. But Marcus knew that wasn't true. There was only one Desert Rose, and he'd just passed it for the second time when he should have been 30 miles beyond it. He grabbed his CB radio. "Any drivers on Highway 50 eastbound, this is Big Blue, you copy?" Static answered him. He tried again. Nothing but white noise. Marcus checked his phone. No signal, which wasn't unusual out here, but his GPS still showed a clear signal and his position. According to the screen, he was exactly where he should be, making good time, no deviation from his route. Marcus forced himself to relax. Equipment glitches happen. Maybe the GPS had frozen on an old position. He'd been driving for nearly 6 hours. Maybe he was more tired than he realized and had gotten turned around somehow, though he couldn't imagine how. The road was perfectly straight. He drove on, more alert now, watching for landmarks. The next identifiable feature should be a bridge over a dry wash, maybe 20 miles ahead. He'd decross it and then he'd know for certain where he was. His hands gripped the wheel tighter than necessary. The heater suddenly felt too warm. He cracked the window, letting cold desert air rush into the cab. At 12:43 a.m., Marcus passed the Desert Rose gas station for the third time. His heart hammered against his ribs. This wasn't possible. He'd been driving in a straight line for nearly an hour since first passing the Desert Rose. No turns, no deviations. Highway 50 was ruler straight through this section. There was no possible way he could be passing the same location again. Marcus slammed on the brakes, and the truck shuddered to a stop in the middle of the empty highway. He sat there, engine idling, breathing hard. The Desert Rose sat maybe 100 yards behind him now, visible in his side mirror. Marcus stared at it, waiting for it to vanish, to reveal itself as a hallucination. It remained exactly as solid and real as the steering wheel under his hands. He checked the GPS again. According to the device, he'd traveled 62 miles from Ely. He should be nowhere near the Desert Rose. Marcus put the truck in gear and continued forward, driving slowly now, his eyes scanning the darkness for anything unusual. The road looked normal. The painted lines were clear and bright in his headlights. The desert stretched away on both sides, sagebrush and sand and nothing else. 5 miles passed, 10 miles, 15. Marcus started to breathe easier. Maybe he'd passed a different abandoned building, something that looked similar. Maybe the stress and the darkness had played tricks on his perception. At 1:11 a.m., Marcus passed the Desert Rose gas station for the fourth time. He didn't stop this time. A sound came out of his throat, something between a laugh and a sob. Marcus pressed the accelerator, pushing Big Blue up to 75 miles per hour. The truck roared through the night, eating up the highway. He had to break out of this. There had to be an end to it. Maybe if he drove fast enough, far enough, whatever was happening would release its grip. The speedometer climbed to 80. The truck rattled and shook. Marcus didn't care. He drove like he was being chased, though nothing pursued him except his own mounting terror. The CB radio suddenly burst to life with a voice, clear and close. "Big Blue, you need to slow down." Marcus grabbed the radio. "Who is this? Where are you?" Only static answer. At 1:34 a.m., he passed the Desert Rose for the 5th time. At 1:58 a.m., the 6th time. At 2:19 a.m., the 7th time. Marcus pulled over at the Desert Rose itself this time, parking directly in front of the abandoned building. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely turn off the engine. He sat in the sudden silence, staring at the building. Maybe if he got out, walked around, touched something real and solid, this nightmare would break. But the thought of leaving the cab filled him with primal terror. Something was deeply, fundamentally wrong with this stretch of reality, and his instincts screamed that leaving the truck would make things worse. He tried his phone again. No signal. The GPS showed his location frozen at the same coordinates, the timestamp stuck at 11:52 p.m. His clock on the dashboard read 2:27 a.m. 3.5 hours trapped in a loop, passing the same landmark over and over, going nowhere despite traveling what should have been hundreds of miles. Marcus turned the engine back. He pulled onto the highway and started driving again, but slower this time, deliberately. He began talking to himself, a steady stream of words to keep panic at bay. He narrated what he saw, passing mile marker 74. Road is clear, no other vehicle, sky is dark, stars visible, truck is running normal. Fuel gauge shows 3/4 tank. At 2:51 a.m., he passed the Desert Rose for the 8th time. This time, he noticed something different. There was a figure standing beside the building. Marcus's blood turned to ice water. The figure was too far away to make out details, but it was definitely human-shaped, standing perfectly still beside the boarded-up entrance. Marcus didn't slow down. He kept driving, his eyes locked on the rearview mirror until the Desert Rose disappeared into the darkness behind him. At 3:14 a.m., the 9th time he passed the Desert Rose, the figure was closer to the road. At 3:36 a.m., the 10th time, it was standing at the edge of the highway. Marcus could see it was wearing what looked like old-fashioned clothing, though he couldn't make out a face. It didn't move, didn't gesture. It just stood there watching his truck pass. Marcus was crying now, tears streaming down his face. He prayed, something he hadn't done since childhood. He begged God, the universe, anything that might be listening to let him out of this loop. The fuel gauge was dropping. He'd burned through a quarter tank, driving in circles. Eventually, he'd run out of fuel, and then what? Would he be stuck here forever, trapped in this impossible stretch of highway? At 4:02 a.m. on what Marcus had lost count of which time passing the desert rose, something changed. The figure was gone, and 50 yards past the abandoned gas station, Marcus saw taillights ahead. Another vehicle. The relief was so intense he nearly blacked out. He accelerated toward the lights, desperate for any sign of normal reality. As he got closer, he realized it was another semi-truck moving at normal highway speed. Marcus grabbed his CB. "Eastbound truck ahead of Big Blue, do you copy?" A moment of static, then a voice. "This is Red Eagle, I copy. That you behind me?" Marcus nearly sobbed. "Red Eagle, what's your 20? Just past that old Desert Rose station, maybe 5 miles out. You okay, driver? You sound rattled." Marcus followed Red Eagle's taillights like a lifeline. They drove together through the darkness, and the Desert Rose didn't appear again. At 4:47 a.m., they passed through Fallen together. Marcus had never been so grateful to see streetlights and buildings. He pulled into the truck stop behind Red Eagle, parked, and climbed down legs. The other driver was a woman in her 50s named Sarah. Over coffee in the 24-hour diner, Marcus told her what had happened. She listened without interruption, her expression serious. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment, then said, "Highway 50's got a reputation. Most drivers don't talk about it, but you're not the first to get caught in something strange out there." Marcus never drove Highway 50 again. He took longer routes, added hours to his trips, and accepted the loss of efficiency. He still drives truck, but he's learned that some roads aren't bound by the normal rules of space and time. The GPS records from that night showed him traveling 387 miles while stuck in a 30-mile loop. His fuel consumption matched the distance his truck actually traveled, not what the GPS recorded. Sometimes, late at night on other highways, Marcus catches himself watching for landmarks repeating. He counts mile markers obsessively. And he never, ever passes an abandoned building without a small spike of fear that he'll see it again a few miles ahead, waiting for him like the Desert Rose. Story 2. The station that shouldn't exist. Daniel Rodriguez had spent 15 years hauling freight across the Midwest, and he prided himself on knowing every decent truck stop between Chicago and Denver. He kept a detailed log, which places had the best food, the cleanest showers, the most reliable mechanics. Daniel was methodical, organized, the kind of driver who planned every stop days in advance. On a September night in 2020, somewhere in rural Nebraska, Daniel discovered a truck stop that wasn't on any map, and by the time he realized something was wrong, it was too late to leave. He'd been on I-80 westbound, hauling refrigerated goods from Columbus to Cheyenne. It was just past 2 a.m., and Daniel was looking for a place to take his mandatory rest break. He'd pushed a bit harder than planned, and fatigue was beginning to blur the edges of his vision. The GPS showed the next major truck stop was still 40 miles ahead, too far. Daniel needed to stop now before exhaustion made him a danger on the road. That's when he saw the sign, Little Creek Travel Plaza, next exit all truck services. The sign was professional, well lit, the kind the major chains used, but Daniel didn't recognize the name. He checked his GPS. No listing for Little Creek Travel Plaza. He checked his trucker apps. Nothing. Strange, but not unprecedented. Sometimes smaller independent stops didn't show up in the databases, and Daniel was too tired to care. He took the exit. The off-ramp curved through darkness, farmland on both sides showing nothing but empty fields in his headlights. After about a mile, the travel plaza appeared, a large, modern complex with multiple fuel islands, a brightly lit convenience store, and what looked like a full-service restaurant. Several trucks were parked in the lot, maybe a dozen rigs scattered across the spaces. Daniel felt a wave of relief. Perfect. He pulled into the lot and parked in a space near the back, away from the overhead lights. Standard practice for rest breaks. Daniel shut down the engine, grabbed his logbook to record the stop, and paused. Something felt off. The travel plaza was modern and well-maintained, but there was something about it that didn't quite fit. The design was slightly wrong, the proportions of the building subtly strange in a way Daniel couldn't articulate. He shook his head. Exhaustion made everything seem weird. He decided to go inside, use the restroom, grab coffee, maybe a sandwich. As Daniel walked across the parking lot, he noticed the other trucks. They were all clean, well-maintained, but the models seemed odd. Some looked newer than anything he'd seen, with design features that seemed futuristic. Others looked older, classic rigs from the 1980s and 1990s, but in pristine condition, as if they just rolled off the assembly line. A Kenworth from what looked like the late 1970s sat next to a semi that seemed to be from a manufacturer Daniel didn't recognize at all. Inside, the travel plaza was immaculate. The floors gleamed under fluorescent lights. Shelves were perfectly stocked with snacks and drinks. Soft music played from hidden speakers, instrumental versions of songs Daniel almost recognized but not quite. Behind the counter stood a young man in a crisp uniform, smiling pleasantly. "Evening, sir." "Fuel or just food?" The man's name tag read Thomas. "Just food," Daniel said. "And coffee, black, large." Thomas nodded and gestured toward the restaurant section. "Fresh pot just brewed, restaurants open all night. Let me know if you need anything else." His smile never wavered, never quite reached his eyes. The restaurant was surprisingly upscale for a truck stop. Vinyl booths, clean tables, a menu that offered far more than the usual greasy fare. Daniel saw 3 other people in the restaurant, 2 men in trucker clothes sitting separately and a woman in a business suit. All of them ate in silence, not talking, not looking at each other. Daniel found a booth and picked up the menu. Appeared almost instantly, an older woman with graying hair and the same pleasant, distant smile as Thomas at the counter. Her name tag read Margaret. She took Daniel's order without writing anything down. Cheeseburger, fries, coffee. "Coming right up, honey," she said, and disappeared into the kitchen. Daniel pulled out his phone to check messages. No signal, not even 1 bar. He frowned. His phone had shown 3 bars on the highway. He tried connecting to the travel plaza's Wi-Fi network, which was listed as Little Creek Guest. It connected immediately but wouldn't load any websites. Daniel gave up and looked around the restaurant instead. That's when he noticed the clock on the wall. It showed 2:47 a.m. But Daniel's watch showed 2:23 a.m. He'd only been inside maybe 10 minutes. He checked his phone. 2:23 a.m. The wall clock had to be wrong. Margaret returned with his food, setting the plate down with precise mechanical movements. The burger looked perfect, professionally prepared, the kind of quality you'd expect from an upscale diner, not a truck stop. Daniel ate, trying to shake the growing sense of unease. The food tasted fine, good even, but eating it felt wrong somehow. Like going through the motions of a familiar activity in an unfamiliar context. He watched the other diners. None of them had moved. The 2 truckers sat frozen, staring at their plates. The woman in the business suit held a coffee cup halfway to her lips, motionless. Daniel's heart began to race. He looked away, then looked back. The woman had moved. She was setting down her cup, but Daniel hadn't seen the movement itself, just the before and after, like frames missing from a film. The 2 truckers were still motionless. Or were they? One of them was in a slightly different position than before, or had he always been sitting like that? Daniel couldn't remember. He stood up quickly, his chair scraping loudly in the silence. "I need to pay and get going," he said to Margaret, who appeared beside him instantly. Had she walked over, Daniel hadn't seen her move. No charge, Margaret said, smiling. First visit is always complimentary. We hope you'll stop by again. Her eyes were empty like windows into nothing. Daniel walked quickly toward the exit, his skin crawling. Thomas stood behind the counter, still smiling. Drive safe, he said as Daniel passed. The automatic doors opened and Daniel stepped out into the parking lot. The air felt wrong. Not cold or hot, just wrong, like the temperature couldn't decide what it should be. Daniel jogged toward his truck. That's when he saw the driver. A man stood beside one of the pristine vintage trucks from maybe 1985. The man was dressed in period-appropriate clothing, jeans and a flannel shirt that looked like they were from the 1980s. He was staring at Daniel, just staring, not moving. His face was expressionless, blank. Daniel reached his truck and climbed into the cab, locking the doors. His hands shook as he started the engine. The Peterbilt driver hadn't moved, still standing in the same position, still staring. Daniel put the truck in gear and drove toward the exit. As he passed the main building, he glanced at the windows of the restaurant. All the diners were standing now, facing the windows, watching him leave. Their faces were pressed against the glass. Margaret and Thomas stood at the entrance, side by side, watching. Daniel hit the accelerator, racing out of the parking lot onto the access road. He followed the road back toward what should be the I-80 on-ramp. But the road just continued, straight and dark, through empty fields. No intersection, no on-ramp, just the road extending into darkness. Daniel drove for 5 miles, 10 miles, his panic rising. The road never intersected with anything. Finally, he stopped and turned around. Maybe he'd missed the turn in his panic. He drove back slowly, watching carefully. The little Creek Travel Plaza appeared ahead, its lights bright against the darkness. Daniel didn't stop. He drove past it, continuing down the access road in the other direction. Again, no intersection, no on-ramp, just the road leading nowhere. He was trapped. Daniel parked on the side of the access road, halfway between the Travel Plaza and nothing. He sat in his cab, breathing hard, trying to think. The logical thing would be to drive cross-country, just leave the road and head through the fields until he found the highway. But something instinctive stopped him. Some deep certainty that leaving the road would make things infinitely worse. Hours passed. Daniel sat in his truck, watching the Travel Plaza in his mirror. Nothing moved. The lights stayed on. No vehicles entered or left. At some point, Daniel noticed that the digital clock on his dashboard was frozen at 2:47 a.m., the exact time shown on the restaurant wall clock. His watch continued to work normally, now showing 5:38 a.m., but the truck's clock remained stuck. As dawn approached, Daniel made a decision. He would drive back to the Travel Plaza and confront whoever ran this place. Demand answers, demand to be let out. He started his engine and drove back, parking directly in front of the main entrance. The lights were still on inside. Daniel could see Thomas at the counter, standing in exactly the same position. Daniel got out and marched toward the entrance. The doors opened automatically. Thomas looked up, smiling that empty smile. Back so soon. Forget something, Daniel grabbed the counter. What is this place? Why can't I find the highway? Thomas's smile never changed. This is Little Creek Travel Plaza. We're here to serve travelers. Where's the on-ramp to I-80? I'm sorry, sir, I don't know what you mean. Daniel wanted to scream. He spun around, looking for anything that would give him answers. That's when he saw the bulletin board on the wall. Posted on it were notices, advertisements, trucking news, and all of it was dated wrong. Some notices were from 1987, some from 2009, some from 2034, dates that hadn't happened yet, dates from decades past, all mixed together as if time meant nothing here. A hand touched Daniel's shoulder. He spun around. Margaret stood behind him. You can't leave yet, she said softly. You haven't been here long enough. Everyone has to stay for a while. That's the rule. Her eyes were sad now, human for the first time. How long? Daniel whispered. That depends. Some people stay hours, some stay days, some stay longer, but everyone gets to leave eventually. You just have to wait. Daniel backed away from her toward the door. "How do I leave?" Margaret gestured toward the parking lot. "When it's time, you'll know. The road will open. You'll find your way back." Daniel ran outside, jumped in his truck, and drove away from the travel plaza. He drove down the access road, not knowing where he was going, just needing to move. After what felt like hours but his watch showed was only 37 minutes, Daniel saw it, an on-ramp. It appeared out of nowhere, a concrete ramp rising up to join a highway above. Daniel didn't hesitate. He took the ramp, merged onto I-80, and drove west as fast as he dared. He drove for 20 miles before he dared to check his mirrors. The exit for Little Creek Travel Plaza wasn't there. No sign, no off-ramp, nothing. Daniel pulled into the next real truck stop, a Flying J he'd stopped at 100 times before. He sat in the parking lot, shaking, for an hour before he could bring himself to go inside. Everything was blessedly normal. The usual crowd, the familiar layout, the coffee that tasted like coffee. Daniel checked his logbook. According to the timestamps, he'd lost 4 hours, time that simply wasn't accounted for. His truck's GPS showed a gap in the route, a blank space where he should have been on I-80 but simply was. Daniel still drives, but he never takes unfamiliar exits anymore. When he needs to rest, he pushes until he reaches a truck he knows, has verified, has been to before. He looked for Little Creek Travel Plaza on maps, in databases, in trucker forums. It doesn't exist. But sometimes, late at night on lonely stretches of highway, Daniel sees exits with signs for truck stops he doesn't recognize. He always drives past them, no matter how tired he is, because he knows that some places exist outside the normal flow of time and space, and if you stop at one, you might never find your way back to the world you left. Story 3. The Hitchhiker Route 40. Emily Carter had been driving solo routes for 8 years, and in that time she'd picked up exactly 0 hitchhikers. It was the first rule veteran drivers taught rookies: never pick anyone up, no matter how desperate they looked. The risks were too high, the horror stories too common. Emily followed this rule religiously, until a freezing March night in 2018 on Route 40 in Missouri, when she saw a little girl standing alone on the shoulder, and every instinct she had screamed at her to stop. It was 3:17 a.m., and Emily was hauling textiles from St. Louis to Kansas City. The highway was empty, no traffic in either direction. Freezing rain had started falling, coating the road in a dangerous glaze. Emily had slowed to 40 miles per hour, fighting to keep her Freightliner steady. Visibility was terrible, her wipers struggling against the ice building up on the windshield. She was watching the road intently when her headlights caught the figure. A little girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old, standing on the shoulder. She was wearing a thin dress, no coat, her hair soaked and plastered to her head. She wasn't moving, wasn't waving for help, just standing there in the freezing rain, staring directly at Emily's truck as it approached. Emily's foot hit the brake instinctively. No child should be out here. No child could survive long in this weather. Something was horribly wrong. Emily pulled onto the shoulder, flashers on, and grabbed her phone. No signal. Of course not. She was in the middle of nowhere and the weather was probably interfering. She'd have to help the girl first, then drive until she found signal to call the police. Emily pulled on her heavy jacket, grabbed a blanket from the sleeper berth, and climbed down from the cab. The freezing rain stung her face. The little girl hadn't moved. She stood about 50 feet back from Emily's truck, perfectly still. "Hey," Emily shouted over the wind. "Are you okay? Where are your parents?" The girl didn't respond. Emily walked closer, holding out the blanket. "You must be freezing. Come on, let's get you warm." Emily approached. She could see the girl more clearly. Her dress was old-fashioned, like something from maybe the 1950s. The fabric was completely soaked, clinging to her thin frame. Her feet were bare. But the most disturbing thing was her expression, completely blank, eyes wide and staring. Emily stopped a few feet away, suddenly uncertain. Something felt wrong. The girl's skin was too pale, her lips nearly blue. Hypothermia, Emily thought. She's going into shock. Sweetie, I'm going to help you, okay? My truck is warm. We'll get you dry and find your parents. Emily reached out slowly. The girl's eyes followed her movement, but nothing else moved. Not her head, not her body, just her eyes. Emily's hand touched the girl's shoulder. The child was cold. Not just cold from the weather, but impossibly cold, like touching frozen meat. Emily jerked her hand back. The girl's lips moved. A whisper barely audible over the wind. She's still in the car. Emily's blood turned to ice. Who's in the car? Where? The girl's arm rose slowly, mechanically, pointing down the embankment beside the road. Emily turned to look. In the darkness and rain, she could barely make out a shape down the slope, maybe 30 yards from the road. A vehicle overturned in a drainage ditch. Emily's mind raced. There had been an accident. This girl had climbed up to the road for help. Someone else was trapped in the vehicle. Emily pulled out her phone again, uselessly checking for signal. Nothing. She turned back to the girl. Okay, listen to me. I'm going to check the car. You need to get in my truck and warm up. Can you do that? The girl didn't respond, didn't move. Emily grabbed her arm, trying to guide her toward the truck. The girl's arm was rigid, unyielding, like grabbing a frozen branch. Please, Emily said desperately. You have to get warm. The girl's eyes fixed on Emily. She's still in the car, she repeated, in exactly the same whisper with exactly the same inflection. Emily made a decision. She ran back to her truck, grabbed her emergency kit and a powerful flashlight and scrambled down the embankment. The slope was steep and slick with freezing rain. Emily slipped twice, nearly falling. Behind her, she could see the girl's silhouette on the shoulder, still standing in the same spot, not moving. The overturned vehicle became clearer as Emily approached. A sedan, at least 10 or 15 years old, lying on its roof in the ditch. Emily reached the car and shined her flashlight through the windows. The interior was empty. No bodies, no blood. The windshield was cracked but not shattered. Emily checked all the doors, locked. She cupped her hands against the window and looked more carefully. The car interior was pristine. No signs, no deployment of airbags, and it was dry, completely dry. As if the car had been here for a long time, protected from the rain. A sound behind her made Emily spin around. The little girl stood 5 feet away. Emily hadn't heard her approach, hadn't seen her descend the slope. The girl was just there, suddenly, silently. Jesus, Emily gasped. You scared me. There's nobody in the car. Are you sure this is the right car? Maybe it was a different accident. The girl stared at her with those wide, empty eyes. She's still in the car. Emily looked back at the sedan. Her flashlight beam swept across the interior again, and this time she saw her. A woman in the driver's seat, hanging upside down from the seatbelt. Emily's heart stopped. The woman hadn't been there seconds ago. The car had been empty, but now there was clearly a body, limp and motionless. Emily screamed and scrambled toward the car, trying the doors, still locked. Ma'am, can you hear me? No response. The woman was too still. Emily needed to break the window. She ran back up the embankment to her truck, the girl somehow keeping pace beside her without seeming to move fast, just appearing at different positions like frames skipping in a video. Emily grabbed her tire iron and ran back down. The girl stood beside the car now. Emily swung the tire iron at the driver's side window. The glass shattered. Emily reached through, unlocking the door, pulling it open. She reached for the woman's neck to check for a pulse. Her fingers touched nothing. Emily recoiled. The woman was fading, becoming transparent. Emily could see through her, see the opposite window through where her body should be solid. No, Emily whispered. No, no, no. She turned to the girl. What is this? What's happening? The girl tilted her head slowly. She's still in the car. She'll always be in the car, and I'll always be here, waiting. Emily backed away, stumbling up the embankment. She ran to her truck, climbed into the cab, and locked the doors. The girl stood on the shoulder, motionless in the freezing rain. Emily started the engine with shaking hands. As she pulled back onto the highway, her headlights swept across where the girl had been standing. Empty. No one there. Emily pressed the accelerator, driving as fast as she dared on the icy road. desperate to put distance between herself and that place. 5 miles down the road, Emily's phone suddenly had signal. She pulled over and called 911, reporting the overturned car, the little girl. The dispatcher took the information, asked Emily to stay put. Emily refused. She gave them the location and said she had to keep moving, she had a schedule. The dispatcher tried to insist, but Emily hung. She couldn't stay there. Something in her bones told her that going back would be fatal. The next day, Emily called the state police to follow up. They'd found the car. It had been there for approximately 6 years, they told her. A woman named Catherine Mills and her daughter Sophie had gone off the road during a winter storm in 2012. The car wasn't discovered until spring. Both had died from the crash. Emily's report had finally prompted them to remove the vehicle, something that had been delayed due to budget and the remote location. They asked Emily about the little girl. Emily said she must have been confused. Maybe the stress and weather had made her see things. The officer sounded relieved. Emily hung up and sat in silence for a long time, but Emily knew what she'd seen. She'd touched that child's frozen shoulder. She'd heard her whisper. And she'd seen the ghost of Catherine Mills hanging in the car, trapped in the moment of her death, waiting for someone to find her. The girl, Sophie, had been waiting too, waiting for someone to stop, someone to try to help. Maybe for 6 years she'd stood on that shoulder, flagging down drivers who never saw her, or who saw her and kept driving because they followed the rule: never pick up hitchhikers. Emily violated her own rule a few more times after that. 3 times in 8 years, she's picked up people who looked wrong, felt wrong, who she suspected weren't entirely alive. She's driven them to locations they request, and each time they vanished from her passenger seat before reaching the destination. Emily never tells anyone. What would she say? That she runs a taxi service for the dead, that some ghosts just need a ride to wherever they're supposed to be. She thinks about Sophie Mills often, wonders if her ghost is still standing on that shoulder on freezing rainy nights, wonders if Catherine is still trapped in that car, even though the wreckage was removed. Emily drives Route 40 sometimes, the same stretch. She watches for the girl. Part of her hopes to see Sophie again, to know if she's finally at peace. Part of her prays she never sees that stretch of road become familiar in that special, terrible way that tells you a place exists outside normal time. Because Emily knows now that highways are haunted, that accidents leave echoes, and that the dead sometimes need help from the living, even when helping them violates every rule you've ever followed. Story 4. The CB Radio Voice. Trevor Mackenzie had been a long-haul driver for 31 years, and his CB radio had been his constant companion for every one of those years. Handle, Moose. Drivers knew routes from Florida to Washington. His voice a fixture on Channel 19, always ready with traffic updates, weather warnings, or just friendly conversation to break up the monotony. Trevor's CB was sacred to him, an old Cobra 29 that he'd maintained meticulously. On a July night in 2017, driving through Wyoming on I-80, Trevor's CB picked up a transmission that changed everything he thought he knew about the voices that traveled through the airwaves. He was eastbound, hauling farm equipment from Sacramento to Omaha. The night was clear, stars bright in the massive Wyoming sky. Traffic was light. Trevor had been chatting intermittently with a driver named Lisa, handle Nightingale, who was about 20 miles ahead of him. They'd been trading stories, talking about their families, the usual driver banter that made the lonely hours pass easier. Around midnight, Lisa signed off, taking her exit toward Rawlins. "Stay safe, Moose," she said. "Catch you on the flip side." Trevor acknowledged and continued east, alone on the highway. The CB crackled with the normal background noise of distant conversations, static, the occasional burst of music from someone's open mic. Trevor hummed along with his radio, comfortable in the routine. Then at 12:47 a.m., his CB came alive with a voice he'd never heard before. "Moose, this is Whisperer, you got your ears on." Trevor keyed his mic. "This is Moose, I copy Whisperer. Where you at?" A pause then. "Behind you, about 5 miles back." Trevor checked his mirrors, no headlights. The road behind him was dark. "Don't see you, Whisperer. You sure you're on I-80 eastbound?" "Affirmative. 5 miles back. I can see your lights." Trevor frowned. On a clear night like this, he should be able to see headlights 5 miles behind him. "What are you driving?" "Peterbilt, black, classic 89 model." Trevor's unease grew. "Running dark, something like that." The voice was strange, distant, like it was coming through layers of static even though the signal was clear. "Well, I'm here if you need anything," Trevor said, defaulting to driver courtesy. "Same speed I'm running, I'll probably see you at the next fuel stop." "I don't stop anymore," the voice said. Trevor keyed his mic to respond, then paused. Something about this conversation felt wrong. The cadence of Whisperer's responses, the content of his words. Trevor decided to let it go, probably just an odd character. The CB attracted all kinds. For the next hour, Whisperer stayed on the channel, occasionally making comments, not directed at Trevor, just observations. "Roads clear ahead. Weather's holding. Lot of stars tonight." Statement was accurate, but the way he said them was flat, emotionless, like someone reading from a script. Trevor responded a few times, trying to engage in normal conversation. "Yeah, beautiful night. You been driving long? 30 years. Same here, more or less. What routes you run?" "All of them." Trevor tried checking the CB for Whisperer's location, but the signal didn't have GPS data. Old CB radios didn't. Still no headlights in his mirrors. "Whisperer, you sure you're behind me? Not seeing any traffic back there." "I'm here. I've been behind you the whole time." Trevor's skin prickled. "The whole time since you first called?" "No, the whole time tonight." Trevor had been on this highway for 3 hours. If Whisperer had been behind him the whole time, they were maintaining exactly the same speed, staying perfectly matched. That was technically possible, but improbable. "Where'd you start your run tonight?" Trevor asked. "Same place you did." Trevor's hands tightened on the wheel. "I started in Sacramento." "I know." The voice remained flat, but something in those 2 words made Trevor's blood run cold. "How do you know that?" "I know a lot about you, Moose." Trevor McKenzie, 31 years driving. Wife Sarah, 2 kids grown and moved away. You like black coffee, no sugar. You listen to classic rock. Your favorite route is I-90 through Montana. Trevor slammed on his brakes. The truck shuddered to a stop in the middle of the highway. His heart hammered against his ribs. "Who the hell are you?" the CB crackled. "I told you I'm Whisperer. How do you know my real name, my family? I know everything about you. I've been riding with you for years." Trevor looked in his sleeper berth, twisted to check the passenger seat. Empty. He was alone. "This isn't funny. If this is some kind of joke." "Not a joke. I'm behind you. Look closer." Trevor stared into his mirrors, searching the darkness. Nothing. Then at the very edge of his vision, he saw it. Headlights far back, maybe 3 or 4 miles. They were faint, barely visible. How long had they been there? Trevor couldn't remember. He put his truck back in gear and started driving, watching those distant lights. They maintained their distance perfectly. When Trevor sped up, they sped up. When he slowed down, they slowed down. "Why are you following me?" Trevor demanded into the CB. "I'm not following, I'm catching up." "Catching up to what?" "To you. I've been trying to catch up for a long time." Trevor's mind raced. This was harassment. Some psycho had gotten hold of his information somehow, was stalking him. He grabbed his phone to call the police. No signal, that was impossible. This stretch of I-80 had coverage. Trevor had used his phone here 100 times. The CB crackled again. "You can't call anyone, this is between us." "What do you want?" shouted. "I want you to remember. Remember the accident. Remember what you did." Trevor's blood turned to ice. The accident. He knew immediately what Whisperer meant. 15 years ago, November 2002, I-40 in New Mexico. Trevor had been driving in heavy fog. A car had swerved into his lane. Trevor had braked, swerved, done everything right. But the fog was too thick, his reaction time just a fraction too slow. He'd clipped the car. Not a direct hit, just enough to send it spinning. It had gone off the road. Trevor had stopped, called 911, waited with the victim. A man alone in the car, unconscious. The ambulance came. The police investigated. Trevor was cleared of any wrongdoing. The fog, the other driver's erratic movement, these were the causes. Trevor had nightmares for years, but eventually he moved on. Everyone told him it wasn't his fault. The man had survived, last Trevor heard. Serious injuries, but alive. Trevor had never learned his name, never followed up. Too painful. That accident wasn't my fault, Trevor said into the CB, his voice shaking. The police cleared me. The man died, Whisper said. 3 days later in the hospital, you never knew. Trevor felt like he'd been punched in the stomach. I didn't know. They told me he was going to be okay. Brain hemorrhage, internal injuries. He seemed stable, then he crashed. Died November 17, 2002 at 3:22 a.m. I'm sorry, Trevor whispered. I'm so sorry. But it was an accident. I did everything I could. I know, Whisper said. I know you did. I'm not angry. I just wanted you to know. I wanted you to remember. Are you him? The man from the accident, a long pause. I don't know what I am now. Trevor was crying, tears blurring his vision. What do you want from me? I told you, I'm catching up. Trevor looked in his mirrors. The headlights were closer now. Maybe 2 miles back. They seemed brighter, more defined. A black Peterbilt, Whisperer had said. Classic '89 model. Trevor remembered the man's car now, could picture it clearly for the first time in years. A black sedan, old, from the late '80s. The man had been in his 50s, wearing a trucker's jacket. Had he been a driver, Trevor couldn't remember. What happens when you catch up? Trevor asked. I don't know. I've been driving these roads for 15 years, following trucks, trying to catch up to you specifically. I can never quite reach you. Always a few miles behind, but tonight I'm closer than I've ever been. The headlights in Trevor's mirror were definitely closer. 1 mile, maybe less. Trevor pressed the accelerator. His truck surged forward, speedometer climbing to 75-80. Matched his speed. You can't outrun me, Whisper said. I'm not limited by fuel or mechanical laws anymore. I'm just here on the road, following. What are you? Trevor shouted. A ghost, a hallucination. What? Yes, Whisper said simply. All of that and none of it. I'm what's left when someone dies on the highway, an echo, a recording. I play out my drive over and over, always looking for the truck that hit me, always trying to catch it. Trevor saw an exit approaching. He took it without slowing, the truck tilting dangerously as he curved down the ramp. He accelerated through a small town, blowing through a red light, not caring. Behind him, the black Peterbilt's headlights followed, appearing at the top of the off-ramp, descending smoothly. Trevor made random turns, left, right, doubling back. The headlights stayed with him. Finally, Trevor pulled into a truck stop, a large facility with dozens of trucks parked. He stopped among them, killed his lights, sat in darkness. The black Peterbilt pulled into the lot. It cruised slowly through the rows of trucks, searching. Trevor ducked down, hiding, praying. The Peterbilt passed his truck, continued to the far end of the lot. Then it stopped. For long minutes, nothing happened. Then the Peterbilt backed up slowly, inexorably, until it was parked directly beside Trevor's truck. Trevor looked out his window. The Peterbilt was pristine, perfectly maintained, exactly like a classic '89 model. The driver's side window was dark. Trevor couldn't see inside. He reached for his CB with shaking hands. Whisperer, static. Then, I caught up. Trevor closed his eyes. What now? Now I know who you are, I know your face, I know you're sorry, that's enough. Is it? What happens to me? Nothing. You keep driving, you remember. And maybe when it's your time, you'll understand what it means to be an echo on the highway. The black Peterbilt's engine started. Trevor watched through his window as the truck pulled forward, drove through the lot, and pulled back onto the highway. It headed west, back toward I-80, and disappeared into the night. Trevor sat in his truck for 3 hours before he could bring himself to move. When he finally started his engine and pulled back onto the road, his CB remained silent. Whisperer never called again. But Trevor knows he's out there, driving the roads, an echo of a man who died because of bad weather and worse luck. Trevor completed his route to Omaha, but he took a week off after that. He told Sarah everything, the whole story. She held him while he cried for the first time since the accident. Trevor still drives, but he's different now. He's careful more than ever before. He doesn't speed. He doesn't drive in bad weather if he can avoid it. And late at night on lonely highways, he keys his CB and says, "This is Moose. Whisperer, if you're out there, I remember. I remember every day." The only answer is static, but Trevor keeps sending the message, hoping that somewhere out there, an echo might hear it and finally find peace. Story 5. The mile marker that counts down. Jessica Hammond had been driving regional routes in the Pacific Northwest for 12 years, mostly between Portland and Seattle, with occasional runs into Idaho. She knew I-90 like the back of her hand, every mile marker, every rest stop, every scenic viewpoint. Jessica prided herself on precision. She logged every mile, every fuel stop, every minute of her runs. Her records were immaculate. On an October night in 2019, somewhere between Spokane and the Idaho border, Jessica's precision was challenged by mile markers that began counting down instead of up, and a highway that seemed to stretch into infinity. She left Portland at 4 p.m. with a load of electronics bound for Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. The run was routine, one she'd done at least 50 times. Jessica expected to reach her destination by midnight, unload in the morning. The weather was clear, traffic light. Everything normal. She crossed into Idaho just after 10 p.m., passing through Spokane without incident. Mile marker 299 marked the state line. From here, it was roughly 35 miles to her exit near Coeur d'Alene. Jessica settled into the final stretch, classic rock playing softly on the radio, her coffee still warm in the cup holder. She passed mile marker 295, then 293, then 291. Standard progression. The highway was nearly empty. Jessica saw maybe 3 other vehicles in 20 minutes, all heading the opposite direction. She liked night driving, peaceful, no traffic stress, just the road and the rhythm of the wheels. At 10:47 p.m., Jessica passed mile marker 289. 2 minutes later, she passed mile marker 290. Jessica blinked. That wasn't right. Mile markers should decrease as you travel east on this stretch. She'd just gone backward. Jessica checked her GPS. It showed her at mile marker 287, still heading east, making normal progress. She shook her head. Must have misread the sign in the darkness. Easy mistake. But 3 miles later, she passed mile marker 292. Jessica's hands tightened on the wheel. Okay, that was definitely wrong. She passed 289, then 290, now 292. The markers were counting up when they should be counting down. Or counting down slower than she was traveling. That didn't make any sense. Jessica checked her GPS again. It showed mile marker 283. Nearly a 10-mile discrepancy between what the GPS reported and what the road signs showed. Jessica keyed her CB radio. "Any eastbound traffic on I-90 near Coeur d'Alene, this is Silver Hawk, you copy?" Static answered. She tried again. Nothing. Jessica frowned. Her CB had been working fine earlier, conversations with other drivers near Spokane. She checked her phone. Full signal, everything normal. GPS still tracking her position accurately. According to the GPS, she should be approaching her exit in about 15 miles. But the mile markers told a different story. Jessica passed marker 294, then 296, then 298. She was approaching the Idaho border again. That was impossible. She'd been driving east for the past 30 minutes, never turning, never deviating. The road was perfectly straight through this section. There was no way she could be heading back toward the state line. Jessica pulled over on the shoulder, flashers on. She sat there, breathing hard, trying to think rationally. The GPS showed her at mile marker 279, well past where the confusion started. But she could see the mile marker right in front of her, 299. The Idaho-Washington border. Jessica grabbed her phone and opened a map app. It showed her position clearly, about 15 miles from her destination, exactly where she should be. She took a screenshot. Then she got out of the truck. The air was cold, crisp with the smell of pine trees. Jessica walked to the mile marker, marker 299. Solid, real, exactly like the 100 other markers she'd passed tonight. She touched it. Cold metal, completely normal. Jessica looked at her truck, then at the mile marker, then down the highway. Nothing looked wrong. The road was just the road. But something was deeply fucked up with space or distance or her perception. Jessica got back in the truck. She pulled up the map screenshot, checking it against her current GPS position. According to the GPS, she'd made significant progress during the 30 seconds she'd been outside her truck. Nearly 3 miles of progress despite being parked. Jessica watched the GPS. Her position dot crawled along the highway, moving at what appeared to be normal highway speed despite her truck being stationary. A theory formed in Jessica's mind, crazy but testable. The GPS was tracking where she should be, where physical distance said she was. But the mile markers were showing something else. Like the road itself had become disconnected from normal space. Jessica started her truck and pulled back onto the highway. She drove at exactly 60 miles per hour, watching the mile markers. After precisely 6 minutes, she should have traveled 6 miles. The mile markers should decrease by 6. After 6 minutes, Jessica passed mile marker 302. She'd somehow gone 3 miles in the wrong direction while traveling at 60 miles per hour east. Jessica stopped again. This time, she set a timer on her phone for 10 minutes and just waited, watching the mile markers. At exactly 5 minutes, a truck passed her going the opposite direction, its lights disappearing quickly into the distance. At exactly 8 minutes, Jessica saw a mile marker in front of her change. The number 302 simply became 303, like a digital display, though the sign was just painted metal. Jessica didn't wait for the timer to end. She started driving, accelerating hard. 70 miles per hour, 80, 90. The mile markers blurred past. 304, 306, 310, 315. She was moving away from Coeur d'Alene at impossible speed, heading back toward Spokane, the markers counting up rapidly. But her GPS still showed her approaching her destination. The contradiction was absolute. Jessica couldn't be going in 2 directions simultaneously, but according to 2 different measurement systems, she was. She slammed on the brakes, the truck shuddering to a stop at mile marker 327. According to this, she was now back in Washington, well past the border. But her GPS showed her at mile marker 258, nearly past her exit. Jessica screamed in frustration. She grabbed her CB. Is anyone out there? Something's wrong with I-90. The mile markers are going backward. Static. Then faintly, a voice. Silver Hawk, this is Mountain Bear. Where are you? Jessica nearly cried with relief. I-90 eastbound, somewhere near Coeur d'Alene, I think. The mile markers aren't making sense. What do you mean? Mountain Bear asked. Jessica tried to explain, but as she talked, she realized how insane she sounded. Mile markers changing, moving in opposite directions from travel, the road counting distance differently than reality. Mountain Bear was quiet for a moment then. Silver Hawk, I'm showing you on my radar. You're right in front of me, maybe half a mile. Jessica looked in her mirror. No headlights. I don't see you. I see your taillights clear as day. The voice paused. Are you okay? You sound rattled. Pull up next to me, Jessica said. Please. Another truck. Will do. Jessica watched her mirrors. Nothing appeared. No headlights approached from behind. No truck passed her. She waited 5 minutes. Mountain Bear, where are you? Right beside you. Can't you see me? I'm waving. Jessica looked to her left. Empty highway. Nothing but darkness and trees. There's no one here. The voice on the CB sounded confused. That's impossible. I'm looking right at you. Jessica ended the conversation and started driving again, slowly this time, 20 miles per hour, watching everything carefully. The mile markers continued counting up, 328, 330, 333. But now she noticed something else. The landscape was repeating. A specific cluster of pine trees appeared on the right shoulder. Jessica made note of it. Approximately 2 miles later, she passed the same cluster again. Identical placement, identical configuration. Jessica stopped and walked back. The trees were the same, exactly the same, not similar trees. The same individual trees in the same spot appearing twice on the highway. The road was looping, not physically. The pavement ran straight, but space itself was folded, locations repeating, distance becoming meaningless. Jessica was trapped in a stretch of highway that didn't follow normal geometric rules. She could drive forward forever and never reach her destination because the road was leading her in circles through folded space, always showing her the same landmarks, the same mile markers, just in different order. Jessica sat in her truck and forced herself to think. If the GPS was accurate, she was near her exit. If she stopped trying to navigate by sight, by mile markers, by normal perception, and simply trusted the GPS coordinates, maybe she could break out of whatever this was. Jessica programmed her GPS to give her audio directions to her destination. Then she closed her eyes. She drove blind, or at least with her eyes closed, following only the GPS voice. Continue for 3 miles. Exit right in 2 miles. Jessica kept her eyes shut, her hands steady on the wheel, trusting the technology instead of her senses. It felt like driving for hours, though the GPS insisted only minutes were passing. Take exit 12 on the right in 500 feet. Jessica opened her eyes. The exit ramp was right there. Mile marker 254, exactly where it should be. Jessica took the exit, hands shaking so badly she could barely steer. At the bottom of the ramp, she pulled into a gas station and parked. She sat there for 20 minutes, breathing, trying to calm down. A few other trucks were by. People were moving normally, filling their tanks, going into the convenience store. Everything was blessedly, perfectly normal. Jessica checked her logs. The timestamp showed she'd arrived on schedule, but she'd experienced what felt like hours of confusion. She went inside, bought coffee, asked the cashier if anyone else had reported problems on I-90 tonight. The cashier, a teenager with bored eyes, said no, everything was normal. Jessica went back to her truck. She completed her delivery in the morning, then drove back to Portland using a completely different route, down through Oregon on smaller highways. She never took I-90 through that section again. Jessica reported the incident to her company, keeping it vague. Equipment malfunction, GPS issues, mild disorientation. They gave her a week off and suggested she see a doctor. Jessica went to the doctor, got a clean bill of health, no signs of stroke or neurological problems. She never told anyone the full truth of what happened, because she knows people would think she'd lost her mind. Maybe she did. Maybe the whole thing was some kind of breakdown. But Jessica has the screenshots from that night. GPS positions that don't match the mile markers. Timestamps that don't align with distance traveled. Evidence that something impossible happened. She still drives, but she's learned that highways sometimes become unstuck from reality. That distance can become fluid, space can fold, and the mile markers that are supposed to guide you can lead you in circles forever. Jessica never closes her eyes while driving anymore. Except on that one stretch of highway she'll never travel again, where closing your eyes might be the only way to find your way home. Story 6. The rest stop with no exit. Aaron Kim had been hauling cargo across the country for 19 years, and in all that time, he'd learned to appreciate good rest stops. Clean facilities, decent food, safe parking. These were the small luxuries that made the job bearable. On a sweltering August night in 2021, somewhere on I-10 in West Texas, Aaron pulled into a rest stop that seemed perfect. By the time he realized he couldn't leave, he'd been trapped there for 16 hours, and the other people in the rest stop weren't people at all. Aaron was hauling furniture from Phoenix to Houston, a 2-day run he'd done countless times. He'd been on the road for 11 hours and fatigue was setting in. The Texas desert stretched endlessly on both sides of the highway, flat and hostile under the afternoon sun. Aaron needed rest, coffee, and a bathroom in that order. Saw the sign announcing a rest area in 1 mile, relief washed over him. He didn't remember this particular rest stop from previous runs, but I-10 had dozens of them. Easy to forget the smaller ones. He took the exit, following the short access road to the rest area. It was impressively nice. Modern buildings, clean landscaping, plenty of parking spaces for trucks and cars. Several vehicles were already parked there. Aaron found a spot away from the main building, standard practice to minimize noise. He shut down his engine, grabbed his toiletry bag, and headed for the facilities. The heat hit him like a physical force. At least 105 degrees, maybe hotter. The air shimmered over the asphalt. Inside, the rest stop was beautifully air-conditioned. Aaron sighed with relief as the cool air washed over him. The building was spacious, with clean restrooms, a large map display showing local attractions, vending machines, and informational brochures about Texas wildlife. A family was studying the map, parents and 2 kids. An elderly couple sat on a bench near the entrance. A younger man, maybe in his 30s, was getting coffee from a vending machine. Everything seemed perfectly normal. Aaron used the restroom, washed his face, and decided to grab a snack before taking a nap in his truck. He approached the vending machines and selected a sandwich and a bottle of water. The machine dispensed them with mechanical efficiency. Aaron noticed the younger man still standing by the coffee machine, cup in hand, staring at it. "Good coffee?" Aaron asked, making conversation. The man didn't respond, didn't even look up, just kept staring at his cup. Aaron shrugged and moved away. Some people weren't chatty. He paid for his items and walked toward the exit. The family was still at the map, the father pointing at something while the mother nodded. The kids were perfectly still, looking at where their father pointed. Aaron paused. The kids weren't fidgeting, weren't moving at all, just standing frozen in position, staring. Kids didn't stay still like that, ever. A prickle of unease ran down Aaron's spine. He watched the family for a moment longer. None of them moved, not even slightly. The father's hand remained extended toward the map, his mouth open mid-word. The mother's head was tilted in a nod that never completed. Aaron walked closer. "Excuse me," no response. Aaron reached out slowly and touched the father's shoulder. The man was rigid, solid, like a mannequin. Aaron jerked his hand back, not a mannequin. He could see the subtle texture of skin, the fine hairs on the man's arm, but he was completely frozen, a statue of human flesh. Aaron backed away, his heart racing. He looked at the elderly couple on the bench. They sat holding hands, both smiling slightly, looking at each other with expressions of contentment. Neither was moving, not breathing. Aaron approached them carefully, watching for any sign of life. Nothing. They were frozen just like the family, caught in a moment that never ended. Aaron ran to the young man by the coffee machine, still staring at his cup. Aaron waved his hand in front of the man's face. No reaction, no eye movement, no blink reflex. Aaron ran outside into the brutal heat. He looked at the parked vehicles. A sedan, an SUV, a minivan, 2 other semis. He jogged to the closest semi and peered through the driver's side window. Empty. He checked the other semi, also empty. The other vehicles were locked, but Aaron could see through the windows, all empty. Aaron returned to his truck and grabbed his phone. No signal, not even 1 bar. He tried emergency calls. The phone couldn't connect. He walked back toward the rest stop building, studying it more carefully now. The architecture was modern, the paint fresh, but something was slightly wrong about the proportions, the way the windows were positioned, the angle of the roof. Like someone had built a rest stop from memory, getting the details almost right but not quite. Aaron tried the main entrance again. The door opened smoothly. Inside, the frozen people remained in their positions. Aaron walked between them, examining each one. They were all caught in mundane moments, walking, reading brochures, washing hands in the bathroom, looking out windows, all frozen, all perfectly preserved in whatever they'd been doing. Aaron checked every door in the building. Most led to utility closets, storage areas, maintenance rooms, all of them empty. He found an office behind a door marked staff only. Inside was a desk, a computer, filing cabinets. Aaron tried the computer. It was off, wouldn't turn on. The filing cabinets were empty. The desk had nothing in it, like a stage set, all appearance and no substance. Aaron returned to the main area, his mind racing. This wasn't a real rest stop, or it had been real once but now was something else. A trap, a prison, a glitch in reality. He walked outside and looked at the access road that had brought him here. The road stretched back toward the highway, maybe a quarter mile. Aaron started walking. He'd drive his truck out of here, get back to I-10, find help, report this nightmare. Halfway to the highway, Aaron realized he could see the rest stop ahead of him. He was walking away from it, but it was in front of him now, not behind. Aaron stopped, turned around. The stop was behind him, where it should be. He turned back toward the highway. The rest stop was there too, directly in his path. Aaron ran. He sprinted toward the highway, watching the distance close. He could see I-10 ahead, the pavement, the white lines. He reached what should have been the end of the access road, the point where it merged with the highway, but his feet hit an invisible barrier. Aaron crashed into it, the impact knocking him backward onto the asphalt. He lay there, stunned, then got up and felt the empty air where the barrier was. Solid, impenetrable, like running into a wall that didn't exist visually but was completely real physically. Aaron pounded on the invisible barrier, screaming for help. Several vehicles passed on the highway, maybe 20 feet away. None of them stopped. None seemed to see him. Aaron grabbed his phone and tried using the flashlight to get attention. No response. He was right there, visible, but the people on the highway didn't react. Like he was invisible to them, or they were in a different reality, unable to perceive him. Aaron walked around the perimeter of the rest stop, feeling along the invisible barrier. It surrounded the entire area, a perfect dome enclosing the rest stop and preventing escape. Night fell. The rest stop's lights came on automatically, bright fluorescent illumination. Aaron sat on a bench outside, watching the highway. Traffic passed regularly. Aaron tried waving, shouting, using his phone flashlight. No one stopped. Hours passed. Aaron dozed fitfully, his sleep filled with nightmares. Around 2 a.m., he woke to silence. The highway was empty, no traffic in either direction. In 19 years of driving, Aaron had never seen I-10 completely empty. Traffic ran 24/7 on major interstates. Aaron walked back inside the building. The frozen people were in different positions now. The family was near the bathrooms, the father holding one of the kids' hands. The elderly couple was at the vending machines. The young man was sitting on a bench. All still frozen, but they'd moved while Aaron was outside, or had been moved. Aaron's skin crawled. He ran back outside, unable to bear being near those things that looked human but couldn't be. As dawn approached, Aaron noticed something new. Another figure frozen, standing near the entrance. A woman in travel clothes holding a purse, staring at the building. Aaron was certain she hadn't been there before. He approached carefully. She looked real, alive, but frozen like the others, fresh, like she'd just arrived. Aaron touched her hand, slightly warm but rigid. Terror seized him. Was this what happened? Did people who stopped here frozen? Would Aaron be next, transformed into another mannequin thing, trapped forever in a moment? Aaron spent the day pacing the perimeter, testing the barrier, trying to find any weakness. Nothing. As evening approached, traffic on the highway increased. Aaron tried again to signal passing vehicles. Still no response. He was trapped, invisible, unable to escape. Night fell again. The second night. Aaron's water was running low. His food was gone. He tried the rest stop's water fountains. They worked, dispensing cold, clean water. At least he wouldn't die of thirst. But how long could he survive here? Days, weeks, forever. On the third morning, exhausted and desperate, Aaron noticed the young man by the bench had moved again. He was now standing, holding a phone as if making a call. Aaron approached him, studying the frozen face. And then he saw it. The man's eyes moved. Just slightly, just a fraction, tracking Aaron's movement. Aaron jumped back. The man's mouth was moving too, impossibly slowly, forming words that would take hours to complete at this speed. The frozen people weren't frozen. They were moving, just incredibly slowly at a different rate of time. Aaron realized the truth. He wasn't trapped in the rest stop. The rest stop was trapped in accelerated time. To the people inside, time was passing normally. But to Aaron, they appeared frozen because they were experiencing time much slower. And to them, Aaron must appear as a blur, moving impossibly fast. That's why the vehicles on the highway didn't stop. They were in normal time. Aaron was stuck in a bubble where time moved differently, too fast to interact with the outside world, too slow to interact with the people inside. Understanding didn't help him escape. Aaron spent 3 more days testing theories, trying to find a way to break through the barrier or communicate with either the frozen people or the highway traffic. Nothing worked. He existed in a slice of time that was disconnected from everything else. On the 5th night, Aaron lay in his truck, staring at the ceiling, accepting that he might die here. And then, without warning, everything lurched. Aaron felt a violent sense of motion, like being in an elevator that suddenly dropped. Sound rushed back in, not the muted silence he'd been experiencing, but full, normal sound. Traffic noise from the highway, birds, wind. Aaron jumped out of his truck and ran to the invisible barrier. His hand passed through empty air, no resistance. He ran toward the highway, and this time there was no barrier. He reached I-10, standing on the shoulder, watching traffic pass at normal speed. Behind him, the rest stop looked different, older, more weathered. Several vehicles parked there, new ones he didn't recognize. Aaron checked his phone. It showed a date 5 days after he'd stopped at the rest stop. 5 days had passed for the rest of the world. For Aaron, it had felt like nearly a week, matching the real time but experienced in isolation. Aaron got in his truck and drove away without looking back. He never reported the incident, never told his company why he'd been out of contact for 5 days. He claimed equipment failure, personal emergency, kept it vague. They docked his pay and gave him a warning. Aaron didn't care. He'd missed the delivery window for his cargo, but he was alive and free. He drives more carefully now, paying attention to rest stops before he pulls in. Some of them feel wrong, the architecture slightly off, the proportions strange. Aaron drives past those, because he knows that some places exist outside normal time, and if you stop in one, you might never find your way back to the moment you left. Story 7. The Load That Wasn't There. Marcus Washington had been driving specialized cargo for 24 years, working for a logistics company that handled sensitive freight, medical equipment, research materials, occasionally government contracts that came with confidentiality agreements and security clearances. Marcus was accustomed to unusual jobs. But on a cold January night in 2019, he picked up a load in Albuquerque that challenged everything he understood about reality. Because when he checked his trailer 30 miles down the road, there was nothing inside, despite the weight sensors showing 18,000 pounds of cargo. The job came through at 4 p.m. Urgent transport from a facility outside Albuquerque to a research center in Salt Lake City. Time-sensitive biological materials, temperature-controlled, standard protocol for this type of cargo. Marcus had done similar runs 100 times. He arrived at the pickup location, a nondescript warehouse in an industrial area. The client representative, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chen, met him at the loading dock. She was professional, efficient, and notably tense. "The cargo is extremely valuable and sensitive," she explained. "Maintain 36 degrees Fahrenheit. No stops except fuel. No inspections of the cargo under any circumstances." Marcus signed the paperwork, and the loading crew brought out a single large crate, approximately 8 feet by 4 feet by 4 feet, secured on a pallet. The crate was made of heavy-gauge steel with electronic temperature monitored in its sides. The crew loaded it carefully, positioning it in the center of Marcus's refrigerated trailer and securing it with straps. Dr. Chen personally verified the temperature settings, then sealed the trailer with a tamper-evident lock. "The cargo weighs approximately 18,000 pounds, she said. "Your weight sensors should confirm that." Marcus checked his onboard systems. The sensors showed 18,350 pounds in the trailer, consistent with the cargo weight plus the crate and pallet. Everything was standard except for Dr. Chen's visible anxiety. "Is there anything I should know?" Marcus asked. "Any specific concerns?" Dr. Chen hesitated. "Just don't open the trailer under any circumstances. If you experience any unusual issues, call me immediately." She handed Marcus a card with a phone number. Marcus nodded and departed, pulling out of the facility at 4:47 p.m. The route was straightforward. I-25 north through Santa Fe, then I-84 through Colorado into Utah. Weather forecasts showed clear conditions. Marcus expected to reach Salt Lake City by 4 a.m., barring any delays. He stopped for fuel in Santa Fe at 6:30 p.m., leaving the trailer sealed, then continued north as darkness fell. Traffic was light. The refrigeration unit hummed steadily, maintaining temperature. Everything was routine. Around 8 p.m., 30 miles past the Colorado border, Marcus felt something strange. The truck's handling changed subtly, as if the weight distribution in the trailer had shifted. Marcus checked his mirrors, verified the trailer was tracking properly, then glanced at his weight sensors, still showing 18,350 pounds. But the truck felt lighter, the acceleration slightly easier. Marcus frowned. Shifting cargo was dangerous, could cause balance problems. He pulled onto the shoulder, flashers on, intending to check the trailer. Then he remembered Dr. Chen's instructions. Do not open the trailer under any circumstances. Marcus sat in his cab, debating. If the cargo had shifted, he needed to secure it, but the client had been explicit. He checked the weight sensors again, still 18,350 pounds. Marcus called the number on Dr. Chen's card. It rang 6 times, then went to an automated voicemail. Marcus left a message explaining the situation and decided to continue driving. The truck was handling acceptably. He demonitored it closely. 20 miles further, Marcus felt the change again. Definite difference in weight distribution. The truck was handled easily, acceleration too quick. Marcus checked the sensors, 18,350 pounds. Impossible. He pulled over again, more concerned now. Something was wrong. Marcus got out and walked around the trailer. The temperature monitors on the side showed 36 degrees, exactly correct. The tamper-evident seal was intact. No visible damage, no signs of cargo shift. But Marcus's instincts, honed over 24 years, screamed that something was wrong. He grabbed a flashlight and his phone, then carefully examined the trailer doors. The seal was intact, but Marcus noticed something strange. The doors weren't perfectly aligned. There was a tiny gap, maybe a millimeter, along one edge. Not enough to break the seal, but enough to see into the trailer with a bright light. Marcus knew he shouldn't look, but he had a responsibility for safe cargo transport. He shined his flashlight through the gap, angling it to see inside. The beam illuminated the trailer's interior. Empty, completely empty. No crate, no pallet, nothing. Marcus stepped back, his heart pounding. That was impossible. He'd watched the cargo loaded. The weight sensors showed 18,000 pounds. The trailer had been sealed. No one had accessed it. Marcus checked the seal again, examining it microscopically. Intact. No tampering. No way to open and reseal it without leaving evidence. Yet the cargo was gone. Marcus called Dr. Chen again. Voicemail. He tried the main logistics company number. The dispatcher answered and Marcus explained the situation. "You're saying the cargo has disappeared?" The dispatcher sounded skeptical. "Are you sure? Did you open the trailer?" "No, I looked through a gap in the doors. The trailer is empty." "But the weight sensors show 18,000 pounds. "Yes." A long pause. "Marcus, that doesn't make sense. Sensors don't show weight that isn't there." "Are you feeling okay?" Any dizziness, vision problems? I'm fine. I'm telling you the cargo is gone. The dispatcher instructed Marcus to proceed to the nearest way station and get an official weight reading. The nearest way station was 40 miles ahead. Marcus drove slowly, his mind racing. How could cargo disappear from a sealed trailer? Theft was impossible. The only explanation was that he'd imagined seeing an empty trailer. Maybe the angle of his flashlight had been wrong, creating an optical illusion. Or maybe exhaustion was affecting his perception. Marcus convinced himself this was the answer. He was tired, stressed by the unusual job, and he'd misinterpreted what he'd seen. The weight sensors didn't lie. 18,000 pounds was in that trailer. At the weigh station, Marcus checked the scales. The officer on duty checked his paperwork, then looked at the scale reading. You're showing 8,350 pounds total vehicle weight. That's just your truck and empty trailer. Where's your cargo? Marcus's blood turned to ice. Run it again. The sensors show 18,000 pounds in the trailer. The officer raised an eyebrow. Your sensors are malfunctioning. Scale shows you're running empty. The officer had Marcus pull forward and weigh. Same result, 8,350 pounds, empty. Marcus opened his cab and pulled up his onboard weight data. The sensors still displayed 18,350 pounds in the trailer. He showed the officer. See. My systems show the cargo. The officer examined the display, then the trailer. Your sensors are definitely broken. Let me check the trailer. Marcus unlocked the doors and the officer broke the seal. He pulled the doors open. The trailer was empty, completely undeniably empty. Clean metal walls, no crate, no pallet, no cargo, just an empty refrigerated trailer. The officer turned to Marcus. Where's your cargo, driver? Marcus couldn't speak. He stared into the empty trailer, unable to process what he was seeing. I loaded it in Albuquerque. I watched them load it. It was there. The officer's expression shifted from suspicion to concern. Are you feeling all right? When did you last sleep? Marcus grabbed his phone and pulled up the photos he'd taken during loading, standard documentation he kept for all sensitive cargo. He showed the officer clear photos of the crate being loaded, secured in the trailer, the sealed doors. The photos were time-stamped, geotagged, proof that cargo had been loaded. The officer examined the photos, then the trailer, then Marcus. This is unusual. The photos clearly show cargo, but the trailer is empty now. The seal was intact. Yes, I never opened it. The officer made Marcus wait while he called his supervisor and made a report. For 2 hours, Marcus sat in his truck while officials examined the trailer, checked the seals, reviewed his documentation. No explanation emerged. The cargo had vanished from a sealed trailer without any physical mechanism for its disappearance. Finally, the weigh station supervisor approached Marcus. We've documented the situation. You're free to go, but we're filing a report with your company and the client. Whatever happened here, it's not something we've seen before. Marcus was allowed to leave. He drove to a truck stop and called Dr. Chen's number again. This time, she answered. Marcus explained what happened, expecting anger or panic. Dr. Chen was silent for a long moment, then said, "Thank you for your professionalism, Mr. Washington. Please proceed to the destination in Salt Lake City as originally planned." "But the cargo is gone," Marcus said. "There's nothing to deliver. Please proceed anyway. We'll meet you there." Dr. Chen ended the call. Marcus sat in confusion, but orders were orders. He drove to Salt Lake City, arriving at the research facility at 3:45 a.m. Dr. Chen was waiting at the loading dock with a security team. She directed Marcus to back up to the dock, then personally opened the trailer doors. She stepped inside with a handheld device, sweeping it around the empty space. After a moment, she nodded. "It's here, exactly where it should be." Marcus stared at her. "There's nothing in there. The trailer is empty." Dr. Chen looked at him with an expression that mixed sympathy and something else, relief maybe. "Mr. Washington, the cargo you transported was not physically present in conventional space. It exists in a, let's call it an adjacent layer of reality. The weight sensors detected its mass, but visual confirmation was impossible. The crate you saw loaded in Albuquerque was merely a placeholder, a reference point. The actual cargo traveled dimensionally, anchored to your trailer but not physically inside it. Marcus felt like his brain was short-circuiting. That's impossible. That's not. That doesn't make sense. Dr. Chen smiled sadly. You're correct. It doesn't make sense within conventional physics, but the cargo has arrived safely and you've completed your contract. You'll be compensated double your usual rate plus a confidentiality bonus. You cannot speak of this job to anyone. The paperwork you'll sign makes that legally binding. Marcus was escorted to an office where he signed documents he barely read, his mind still trying to process the impossible explanation. He received a payment that appeared in his account instantly, triple his usual rate for this type of run. Dr. Chen personally escorted him off the facility grounds. As he was leaving, Marcus turned back to her. Was any of it real? The crate, the loading, any of it? Dr. Chen considered the question. Reality is more complex than we pretend. What you experienced was real within the framework you understand. What we do here operates in frameworks most people never encounter. You're one of the few who's handled our cargo successfully. Most drivers experience complications. What kind of complications? Marcus asked. Dr. Chen's expression darkened. Psychological breaks, missing time. 3 drivers simply disappeared, vehicles found abandoned. You complete normally, which is rare and valuable. We may contact you for future transport. Marcus left, drove back to Albuquerque, and took a week off to process what had happened. He researched dimensional physics, quantum mechanics, tried to find explanations that made sense. Nothing he found adequately explained cargo that existed but couldn't be seen, that registered weight but occupied no physical space. 6 months later, Dr. Chen's facility contacted him again with another job. Marcus declined. He'd been driving for 24 years, thought he'd seen everything. But there are some things that, once you know they exist, change how you see the world. Marcus still drives, but he's turned down all specialized cargo since. He hauls normal freight now. Furniture, consumer goods, things that stay visible and physical. Because Marcus learned that reality has layers, and some cargo travels through dimensions most people never access. And if you transport something that exists outside normal space, you might glimpse the deeper structure of the universe. And that glimpse can break something fundamental in how you understand the world you drive through every day. Story 8. The Fog That Followed. Raymond Pierce had been a long-haul driver for 27 years, weathering every kind of road condition imaginable. Blizzards, ice storms, torrential rains, desert heat. He'd driven through fog countless times, the dense, vision-limiting kind that reduced speed to a crawl and made every mile exhausting. But on a November night in 2020, somewhere on Highway 101 along the Oregon coast, Raymond encountered fog that behaved in ways fog shouldn't behave. It followed his truck specifically, maintained consistent distance, and inside it, things moved that weren't part of the natural world. Raymond was hauling seafood processing equipment from Seattle to San Francisco, a route that took him down the spectacular Oregon coastline. He'd left Seattle at noon, planning to drive through the night and reach San Francisco by morning. The weather forecast showed clear conditions, unusually good for this time of year on the coast. Raymond was in good spirits, enjoying the scenic drive as afternoon faded to evening. Around 8 p.m. just south of Newport, the fog appeared. It started as a small patch on the road ahead, maybe 50 yards of reduced visibility. Raymond slowed as he entered it, standard practice. Fog was common on the coast. But as he drove through what should have been a limited fog bank, the fog didn't end. It continued, thick and impenetrable, reducing visibility to 30 feet. Raymond checked his weather app. No fog warnings. The forecast still showed clear conditions. He tried his CB radio. Northbound and southbound traffic on 101. This is Steel Eagle. anyone else hitting heavy fog near Newport? Static and distant voices, but no clear responses. Raymond drove carefully, 40 miles per hour, high beams off to reduce reflection. The fog pressed against his windshield like something solid, swirling in patterns that seemed almost deliberate. After 20 minutes, Raymond expected to drive out of the fog bank. Coastal fog usually came in patches, separated by clear sections, but the fog continued, endless and unchanging. Raymond checked his GPS. He traveled 8 miles. Should have passed through any normal fog bank by now. He slowed further, watching the road intently. That's when he noticed something strange. The fog wasn't uniform. It was thicker directly around his truck, creating a bubble of nearly zero visibility, while further ahead and behind, he could see slightly clearer conditions. Like the fog was concentrated on his position specifically. Raymond tried to rationalize it. Different density layers, temperature variation, some meteorological explanation. But his instincts said otherwise. At 8:47 p.m., Raymond saw something in the fog. A shape moving parallel to his truck on the left side, pacing him. Raymond slowed to 30 miles per hour. The shape matched his speed. He accelerated to 50. The shape kept pace perfectly. Raymond couldn't make out details through the fog, just a dark mass, roughly human-sized, moving smoothly alongside the truck. Raymond grabbed his spotlight and aimed it at the shape. The beam penetrated maybe 10 feet into the fog, then scattered into uselessness. The shape remained just beyond the light's reach. Raymond's heart rate increased. He tried the CB again. Anyone on 101, this is Steel Eagle. I've got heavy fog and possible vehicle pacing me on the left shoulder. Can anyone confirm visual? A voice crackled through, clearer now. Steel Eagle, this is Nighthawk. I'm northbound about 5 miles from Newport. Conditions are clear here. No fog. Raymond looked at his GPS. He was 15 miles south of Newport. The other driver should be seeing the same conditions. Nighthawk, are you sure? I've got zero visibility fog. Negative, Steel Eagle. Sky is clear, stars visible. You okay? Raymond didn't answer. Something was deeply wrong. He was driving through fog that didn't exist for other drivers, being paced by something in that fog that moved the vehicle he'd ever seen. Raymond made a decision. He needed to stop, assess, figure out what was happening. He started looking for a pullout or rest area. According to his GPS, there was a scenic overlook 2 miles ahead. The fog thickened further. Visibility dropped to maybe 15 feet. Raymond could barely see past his hood. The shape on the left was still there, closer now. And there were others. Raymond could see multiple shapes in the fog, surrounding his truck, keeping pace. Front, back, both sides. At least 6 distinct forms, all moving with his truck, all staying just beyond clear visual range. Raymond's hands were shaking on the wheel. He wanted to accelerate, to outrun whatever was surrounding him, but driving fast in zero visibility was suicidal. The scenic overlook appeared ahead, marked by a small sign barely visible in the fog. Raymond pulled off the highway into the parking area. He stopped, engine running, and sat gripping the wheel. The shapes in the fog stopped with him. They surrounded the truck in a loose circle, maybe 20 feet away, just dark suggestions of form in the thick grayness. Raymond grabbed his phone. No signal. His CB radio hissed with static. He tried calling out. If anyone's out there, identify yourself. This is a commercial vehicle. You're creating a hazard. No response. The shapes didn't move closer, didn't retreat, just stood there motionless now, surrounding him. Raymond turned on all his lights. Headlights, cab lights, trailer lights, flashers. The lights created a small bubble of illumination, but the fog seemed to absorb the light, turning it diffuse and useless. The shapes were more visible now, and what Raymond saw made his blood run cold. They weren't solid. He could see through them, vague humanoid outlines with no distinct features, like shadows cast by nothing. One of the shapes moved closer, gliding over the pavement with no walking motion, just smooth approach. Raymond locked his doors, a useless gesture against something that wasn't physical. The shape reached his driver's side window and stopped inches from the glass. Raymond could see it clearly now. A human silhouette, featureless, made of fog itself, denser than the surrounding mist but still translucent. It raised an arm slowly and placed its hand against the window. Raymond felt cold seep through the glass, through the door, into the cab. Not normal cold, but something deeper, like the absence of heat, of energy, of life itself. Raymond's breath fogged in the suddenly frigid air. The temperature gauge on his dashboard dropped rapidly. 70 degrees, 60, 50. The windshield started frosting over from the inside. Raymond turned maximum, but it had no effect. The cold intensified, painful now, biting through his clothes. The fog shape at his window was joined by others. They pressed against the truck, surrounding it completely, their hands on the metal and glass. The cold was unbearable. Raymond's teeth chattered. His fingers went numb. He couldn't stay here. He'd freeze despite the heater. Raymond put the truck in gear and accelerated hard, pulling out of the overlook back onto the highway. The shapes fell away from the truck, but they followed. Raymond could see them in his mirrors, gliding after him, keeping pace as he accelerated to 60 miles per hour. The fog stayed thick, impenetrable. Raymond drove blind, trusting his GPS to keep him on the road. He couldn't see lane markings, couldn't see beyond his hood, but staying still meant freezing. His only option was to keep moving, hope that distance or time would break whatever was happening. The dashboard clock showed 9:23 p.m. Raymond had been in the fog for 35 minutes. It felt like hours. At 9:41 p.m., Raymond's fuel warning light came on. He'd been running the engine hard, heater at maximum, trying to combat the supernatural cold. He needed fuel soon. The GPS showed a gas station in 10 miles. Raymond prayed it would be open, that he could reach it, that the fog would allow him to stop and refuel. The shapes continued following, visible in his mirrors when the fog briefly thinned, then disappearing into the gray, then reappearing. The gas station appeared like a miracle, lights glowing in the fog. Raymond pulled in, parking at a pump. The fog was less thick here, maybe 30 feet of visibility. Raymond could see the convenience store, lights on inside but no people visible, no other vehicles. Raymond tried his door. The handle was frozen, coated in ice despite the heater. He had to slam his shoulder against the door to break it open. He stumbled out into the fog, his breath steaming. The temperature outside was freezing, far colder than normal November weather on the coast. Raymond's weather app showed 45 degrees, but it felt like 20. Raymond looked around for the fog shapes. They stood at the edge of the parking lot, a dozen or more, circling the gas station but not entering. Like they were held back by the lights or the boundary of the property. Raymond ran to the convenience store. The door was locked, lights on, but the store was empty. No staff, no customers. Raymond pounded on the glass. "Hello, anyone?" No response. He tried his phone, still no signal. Raymond returned to his truck, filled the tank with his fuel card, and climbed back into the cab. He sat there, from cold and fear. The fog shapes had moved closer, now standing just outside the ring of the gas station's lights. They were waiting. Raymond realized they couldn't or wouldn't enter the light, but once he left, they'd follow again. Raymond couldn't stay at the gas station forever. He started his engine and pulled back onto the highway. The shapes immediately resumed their pursuit, surrounding his truck as the fog closed in again. Raymond drove south, desperate to escape, to find somewhere the fog couldn't follow. Miles passed. The fog never thinned. The shapes never relented. Raymond's mind began to fracture from stress and fear. He started talking to himself, narrating his actions to stay focused. Speed 50 miles per hour. Fuel 3/4 tank. GPS shows 40 miles to Coos Bay. Stay on the road. Keep moving. At 11:17 p.m., Raymond saw lights ahead. Not the diffuse glow of a gas station, but multiple lights moving. Vehicles. Raymond accelerated toward them, hope surging. The lights resolved into a traffic jam. Dozens of cars and trucks stopped on the highway. Raymond slowed, approaching the stopped vehicles. The fog thinned slightly here, and Raymond could see people outside their vehicles, looking confused, talking to each other. Raymond stopped and got out. A woman approached him. "Do you know what's going on? We've been stopped for an hour. No accident, no construction, just stopped. And this fog came out of nowhere." Raymond looked around. The fog was present here too, but thinner, and the shapes were gone. He couldn't see them anymore. The woman was looking at him strangely. "Are you okay? You look frozen." Raymond realized he was shaking uncontrollably, his skin pale, his lips probably blue. "I need to warm up," Raymond managed to say. The woman led him to her car, turned on the heater. Other people gathered around, asking questions. Raymond tried to explain, but the words came out jumbled. Fog that followed him. Shapes that weren't human. Cold that shouldn't exist. He sounded insane. Eventually, police arrived. The traffic jam broke up, caused by nothing they could identify. Everyone was allowed to continue. Raymond sat in his truck, the heater finally warming him, and decided he was done driving for the night. He found a hotel in Coos Bay, checked in, and sat in the room with all the lights on, afraid to sleep. The fog never followed him inside. When morning came, Raymond checked the weather reports. No fog had been reported on Highway 101 the previous night. Clear conditions all along the coast. Raymond examined his truck in daylight. Frost patterns covered the cab and trailer, intricate and wrong, forming shapes that looked like faces, bodies. Raymond documented it with photos, then washed the truck thoroughly. He completed the delivery to San Francisco, then drove home to Seattle and quit. After 27 years, Raymond retired from long-haul driving. He told his wife something had happened on the Oregon coast, but he couldn't explain it adequately. She saw the fear in his eyes and didn't push. Raymond never drove Highway 101 again. He still has nightmares about the fog, about shapes made of mist and cold, about something ancient and hungry that lives in the boundary between sea and land, waiting for travelers to surround and consume. Raymond researched the Oregon coast's history and found dozens of reports over the years. Drivers experiencing strange fog, unexplained cold, shapes in the mist. Most reports were dismissed as hallucinations or atmospheric phenomena. But Raymond knows better. He encountered something that exists in the fog, uses it as a medium to manifest, feeds on the warmth and life of travelers. And once it targets you, it follows, relentless and patient, until you escape its territory or succumb to the cold that erases everything you are. Story 9. The convoy that wasn't Michael Torres had been driving team routes for 16 years, usually partnered with his brother Eddie. Together, they'd hauled freight across every state, a reliable pair known for meeting deadlines and maintaining safety records. On a December night in 2018, on I-40 through the Arizona desert, Michael was driving solo while Eddie recovered from surgery. Michael thought he was joining a convoy of fellow truckers for safety and company through the lonely night. By the time he realized the other trucks weren't real, he was surrounded by them, and breaking free nearly cost him his life. Michael left Flagstaff at 9 p.m. with a load of industrial parts bound for Albuquerque. The night was cold and clear, temperature dropping toward freezing. Traffic was moderate. Michael preferred driving with company, other trucks running the same direction, the camaraderie of shared space on the highway. Around 10 p.m., heading east on I-40, Michael noticed several trucks ahead of him, running in a loose formation. He accelerated to catch up, pulling his Kenworth into the group. There were 6 trucks including Michael's, 2 Peterbilts, a Freightliner, a Volvo, an International, and Michael's Kenworth. They settled into a comfortable convoy, each truck maintaining safe distance, all running about 70 miles per hour. His CB radio. "Eastbound convoy on I-40, this is Desert Fox, good to be running with you." Silence. Michael tried again. "Anyone copying on channel 19? More silence. He checked his CB. It was working, receiving distant chatter from other frequencies. The trucks around him just weren't responding. Michael shrugged it off. Not everyone used CB. Some drivers preferred silence. At least he had company, could watch the other truck's brake lights follow their navigation through the darkness. The convoy ran smooth and steady. Michael settled into the rhythm, comfortable. Around 10:45 p.m., Michael noticed something odd. The trucks around him were all classic models, older rigs from the 1980s and 1990s, but in perfect condition. Pristine paint, no road wear, chrome gleaming under the sparse highway lights. Collector's pieces, all of them. Unusual to see one in such condition, let alone five. Michael tried the CB again. "Convoy, you all running classics, beautiful rigs." No response. Michael looked more closely at the nearest truck, a Peterbilt to his right. The driver was visible in silhouette, hands on the wheel, posture perfect. But something was wrong with the proportions. The driver seemed too still, too rigid. Michael blinked and looked again. The driver's position hadn't changed at all. No small adjustments, no head movements, nothing, like a statue. A chill ran down Michael's spine. He looked at the other trucks. All the drivers were similarly motionless, frozen in driving position. Michael told himself they were just focused, eyes on the road, professionals maintaining concentration. But the absolute stillness was unnatural. Michael checked his speedometer. 70 miles per hour. He glanced at the Peterbilt beside him. It was maintaining exactly the same speed, perfectly matched. Michael accelerated slightly, 72 miles per hour. The Peterbilt matched him instantly, keeping the same relative position. Michael decelerated to 68. The Peterbilt matched him again, staying exactly parallel. Michael's heart started racing. He grabbed his phone and called Eddie, even though his brother was supposed to be resting post-surgery. Eddie answered groggily. "Mike, what's wrong?" "I'm running with a convoy, but something's off. The other drivers aren't responding to CB, they're not moving, and they're matching my speed exactly." Eddie was quiet for a moment. "Like they're pacing you." "Yeah, perfectly. Get away from them, now." Eddie's voice was sharp, urgent. "That's not a normal convoy." Michael accelerated hard, pulling ahead of the group. The Kenworth's engine speedometer climbing to 80. Michael checked his mirrors. The convoy was keeping pace, all 6 trucks accelerating simultaneously, maintaining their formation with Michael in it. "They're staying with me," Michael told Eddie, phone on speaker. "No matter how fast I go. Brake hard, see if they react," Eddie instructed. Michael slammed on the brakes. His truck shuddered, speed dropping rapidly. In his mirrors, the convoy maintained speed for a fraction of a second. Then all 6 trucks braked simultaneously, decelerating at exactly the same rate, maintaining their positions around Michael. "This is impossible," Michael said. "Trucks can't coordinate like that. There's no communication between them." "Because they're not real trucks," Eddie said. "Or they're not being driven by real people. Mike, you need to get off the highway. Take the next exit." Michael saw an exit sign ahead, 2 miles. He moved into the right lane. The Freightliner on his right moved with him, blocking the exit ramp. Michael tried to force his way over. The Freightliner matched his movement, staying parallel, preventing him from exiting. Michael felt panic rising. He was boxed in by the convoy, trucks on all sides, all moving in perfect coordination. "They won't let me exit," Michael told Eddie. "Try the left shoulder. Go around them," Eddie suggested. Michael jerked his wheel left, crossing into the left lane and onto the shoulder. The Peterbilt on his left moved with him, cutting him off. Michael swerved back into the lane, narrowly avoiding a collision. The convoy tightened around him, the spaces between trucks decreasing. Michael was trapped in the center of a moving box. "What do they want?" Michael shouted. Eddie's voice was tense. "I don't know, but you can't let them pen you in. If they force you off the road, you could roll the truck." Michael tried every maneuver he could think of, accelerating suddenly, braking, swerving, changing lanes. The convoy anticipated every move, blocking him, controlling him. It was like the trucks were connected, operating as a single entity with Michael caught in the center. Then Michael noticed the road ahead. The convoy was steering him, subtle pressure from the trucks on either side, guiding him toward the right side of the highway. Michael realized they were herding him toward an upcoming exit. Mile marker 244. a remote exit leading to nothing but desert roads. "They're pushing me toward an exit," Michael told Eddie. "Should I take it?" "No, stay on the main highway. There's traffic, lights, witnesses. If you go off onto a remote road, you'll be alone with them." Michael fought to maintain his position, steering slightly left to resist the pressure. The Peterbilt on his left moved closer, its trailer inches from Michael's cab. One wrong move and they'd collide. The Freightliner on his right closed in two, boxing him completely. Michael had no choice. He was being forced toward the exit. The off-ramp approached. Michael tried one last maneuver, braking hard and steering right, attempting to pass behind the convoy. The trucks adjusted instantly, and the International behind Michael braked at the exact same rate, blocking him. Michael took the exit, his truck forced down the ramp by the convoy's coordinated movements. The convoy followed, all 6 trucks taking the exit in formation. They were off I-40 now on a narrow 2-lane road heading into the desert. No lights, no civilization, just darkness and empty land. Michael's panic turned to terror. "Eddie, they forced me off the highway. I'm on County Road 57 heading south." "Turn around. Get back to I-40, Eddie said. "I can't. They're surrounding me." The convoy maintained formation on the narrow road, boxing Michael in. He couldn't turn around, couldn't stop, could only continue forward into the darkness. The road deteriorated, pavement giving way to rough gravel. Michael's truck bounced over the uneven surface. Where were they taking him, and why? Michael's mind raced through possibilities. Hijacking, but they weren't stopping him. Government, criminal organization, none of it made sense. After 5 miles on the gravel road, the convoy began to spread out, the trucks moving apart, creating gaps. The Freightliner in front of Michael slowed and pulled to the side. Then the Peterbilt on his left did the same. One by one, the convoy trucks pulled over, creating an opening. Michael saw his chance. He accelerated, pushing his truck as fast as he dared on the rough road, racing past the stopped trucks. In his mirrors, he saw them sitting motionless on the roadside, headlights still on, engines running. No drivers emerged. The trucks just sat there, empty and waiting. Michael drove for 20 minutes on the gravel road, following it as it curved through the desert. Finally, he saw pavement ahead and a sign for I-40. The road reconnected to the highway 8 miles from where he'd been forced off. Michael merged back onto I-40 and drove east as fast as traffic allowed, desperate to put distance between himself and that stretch of road. He didn't stop until he reached a busy truck stop in New Mexico, 40 miles from where the convoy had released him. Michael parked under the brightest lights he could find and sat shaking in his cab. Eddie had stayed on the phone the entire time, talking him through it, keeping him focused. "You okay?" Eddie asked. "I don't know. What the hell was that?" Michael looked at the other trucks in the parking lot and drivers coming and going. Everything looked blessedly normal. "I have no idea," Eddie said. "But I've heard stories. Phantom convoys, ghost trucks, things on the highways that look real but aren't. Most drivers dismiss them as urban legends. But some things out there, they're real." Michael completed his delivery to Albuquerque, but he couldn't shake the experience. He researched phantom convoys and found scattered reports, mostly dismissed or ridiculed. But a few accounts matched his experience. Convoys of classic trucks, drivers who didn't move, vehicles that coordinated impossibly, travelers forced onto remote roads for unknown purposes. Most people who reported it were never believed. Some claimed the phantom trucks had led them to accident sites where they were able to help. Others reported being herded toward locations where criminal activity was occurring, as if the phantom convoy was trying to bring witnesses. Michael doesn't know what the convoy wanted. He never learned what was at the end of that gravel road, if anything. He refuses to drive I-40 through that section of Arizona anymore, taking alternate routes despite the added time and miles. And he never drives solo at night if he can avoid it. Eddie recovered from surgery and rejoined Michael on the routes, both brothers watchful now, wary of convoys that form too perfectly, of trucks that move in unnatural coordination. Michael knows there are things on the highways that appear real, that mimic normal traffic but serve purposes beyond human understanding. Maybe they're echoes of accidents, impressions left by drivers who died on the roads, playing out their routes eternally. Maybe there's something else, something that uses the form of trucks to interact with the living. Michael doesn't need to understand them. He just needs to avoid them to recognize when a convoy isn't a convoy but something that wears the shape of familiar things to mask its true nature. Because once you're surrounded, once they have you boxed in, you're at their mercy. And mercy isn't something phantoms are known to possess. Story 10. The Passenger in the Mirror. Lisa Chen had been driving long-haul solo for 22 years, one of the relatively few women who'd made a career of it. She'd faced every challenge the job offered: mechanical failures, bad weather, difficult clients, and the occasional asshole who thought women didn't belong behind the wheel of a big rig. Lisa had proven herself 1,000 times over, earning respect and building a reputation for reliability. On a March night in 2017, driving through rural Montana on Highway 2, Lisa discovered that the greatest challenge wasn't mechanical or social, but supernatural, when she realized someone was sitting in her passenger seat, visible only in mirrors, and had been there for miles without her noticing. Lisa was hauling agricultural equipment from Spokane to Minot, North Dakota, a 2-day run across some of the most remote stretches of highway in the northern United States. She left Spokane at 5 p.m., planning to drive through the night and stop in North Dakota the next morning. The route took her through Montana on Highway 2, a lonely 2-lane road that crossed the state through tiny towns separated by vast distances. Lisa liked this route. The solitude felt peaceful, not threatening. She had her music, her audiobooks, and the stars overhead once darkness fell. Around midnight, about 50 miles west of Havre, Montana, Lisa reached up to adjust her rearview mirror. As she tilted it, she caught a glimpse of movement in the sleeper berth behind her. Lisa's heart skipped. She lived alone, drove alone, was certain she was alone in the truck. She turned around quickly, looking directly at the sleeper berth. Empty. The curtain was open, the space clearly visible, no one there. Lisa turned back to the road, breathing hard. Just a trick of the light, maybe shadows from passing trees, but Lisa couldn't shake the feeling. She kept glancing in the rearview mirror, checking the sleeper berth. It remained empty when she looked directly at it. But in the mirror, just at the edge of her peripheral vision, she kept seeing something. A shape, a suggestion of presence. Lisa adjusted the mirror again, focusing on the sleeper berth's reflection. Nothing. She turned on the cab's interior light. The sleeper berth was illuminated, clearly empty. Lisa turned the light off and continued driving, telling herself she was tired seeing things. 20 miles later, Lisa glanced at her passenger side mirror, checking clearance as she navigated a curve. In the reflection, she saw someone sitting in her passenger seat. A man, visible in the mirror, sitting perfectly still, looking straight ahead. Lisa's scream caught in her throat. She jerked her head to look at the passenger seat directly. Empty. No one there. She looked back at the mirror. The man was still visible in the reflection, as clear as Lisa's own reflection, sitting in the seat that was empty in reality. Lisa pulled over onto the shoulder, shaking violently. She turned on all the interior lights and examined the passenger seat. Empty, undeniably empty. She could see every detail, the fabric, the seatbelt, the console. No one was sitting there. Lisa looked at the passenger side mirror again. The man was still visible in the reflection, sitting in the seat, motionless. Lisa could see details now. Middle-aged, wearing a flannel shirt and jeans, expression neutral. Not threatening, just present, existing in the mirror but not in reality. Lisa grabbed her phone and took a photo of the passenger seat, empty in the photo. She took a photo of the passenger mirror's reflection. The man was visible in the photo, sitting there in the mirrored image, even though the seat was empty. Lisa stared at the photo, her mind unable to process the contradiction. She was photographing something that existed in reflections but not in actual space. That violated every law of physics she understood. Lisa got out of the truck and walked around to the passenger side. She opened the door and examined the seat. Empty. She could touch it, feel the fabric, confirm no one was sitting there. But in the truck's side mirror, the man sat in the seat, visible and solid. Lisa slammed the door and walked back to the driver's side. She climbed in, locked the doors, and sat gripping the wheel. What the hell was happening? Hallucination? No, the photo showed the figure. The camera saw it too, some kind of optical phenomenon, but it was consistent across multiple mirrors. Lisa forced herself to think rationally. The figure wasn't threatening her. It was just sitting there. If it had been there for miles without her noticing, it clearly wasn't intending harm. Maybe if she just ignored it and kept driving, it would disappear. Lisa pulled back onto the highway and continued east. She avoided looking at the mirrors, just watched the road, focused on driving, but the presence gnawed at her awareness. She knew it was there, visible in the mirrors, invisible in reality, an impossible passenger riding along. After an hour, Lisa's curiosity overcame her fear. She glanced at the rearview mirror, angling it to show the passenger seat. The man was still there, unchanged. Lisa found her voice. "Who are you?" No response. The figure didn't move. Lisa tried again. "What do you want?" Silence. The man just sat there, looking ahead, not reacting to Lisa's voice. Lisa realized he probably couldn't hear her. He existed in a different layer of reality, reflected but not present. Lisa drove for another hour, periodically checking the mirrors. The man remained constant and unchanging. Around 2 a.m., Lisa saw a truck stop ahead and decided to stop for coffee, a break, a chance to think. She pulled into the lot and parked. The man was still visible in the mirrors. Lisa got out and went inside, grateful to be in a brightly lit, populated space. She bought coffee and sat in a booth, trying to decide what. Continue driving with the phantom passenger. Stop and call someone, though who would she call and what would she say? After 20 minutes, Lisa returned to her truck. She walked around it, checking all the mirrors. The man was visible in every mirror that showed the passenger seat. Side mirrors, rearview mirror, even the small convex mirror she used for blind spots. All showed the same figure, sitting patiently. Lisa climbed back into the cab. On impulse, she reached over to where the man would be sitting if he were real. Her hand passed through empty air. But in the mirror, her hand appeared to pass through his torso, and for just a moment she felt cold. Deep, penetrating cold, like plunging her hand into ice water. Lisa jerked her hand back. The man turned his head and looked at her. In the mirror, his eyes met hers. Lisa gasped. He'd been motionless for hours, and now he was looking directly at her reflected self. His lips moved, forming words. Lisa couldn't hear anything, but she watched his mouth, trying to lip read. "Help!" He was saying help, over and over. "Help, help, help!" Lisa's fear transformed into something else. Not terror, but a sad horror, a realization that this thing in her mirror wasn't a threat but a plea. "Help with what?" Lisa asked. "How can I help you?" The man raised his hand slowly, pointing. Lisa followed the direction. He was pointing forward down the highway, east, the direction she was already traveling. Lisa understood. He wanted her to keep driving, to take him somewhere, or take his reflection somewhere. The distinction was unclear. Lisa started the truck and pulled back onto Highway 2. The man in the mirror lowered his hand and returned to looking straight ahead. Lisa drove through the rest of the night, the phantom passenger beside her. She stopped trying to understand it rationally. Some things couldn't be rationalized. She just drove, following the highway east, trusting that there was a purpose to this impossible journey. Dawn came slowly, light spreading across the Montana plains. As the sky brightened, Lisa noticed the man in the mirror was fading. He became more translucent, less defined. By full daylight, he was barely visible, just a faint outline. Lisa continued driving. Around 8 a.m., approaching Havre, the man suddenly became more solid again. He turned to Lisa and pointed insistently to the right, toward an upcoming exit. Lisa took the exit, following a rural road south. The man kept pointing, indicating turns. Lisa followed his directions, driving through farmland, past scattered houses. After 10 miles, the man pointed toward a small gravel road leading to an old farmhouse. Lisa turned onto the road and drove to the house. The man in the mirror was pointing at a barn behind the house, his expression urgent now. Lisa parked and got out. The property looked abandoned, the farmhouse windows dark, the barn weathered. Lisa walked toward the barn, a sense of dread building. She pulled open the barn door. Inside, parked among farm equipment, was a truck. An old semi-truck, probably from the 1980s. Lisa approached it. The driver's side door was open. Inside, slumped over the wheel, was a body. A man middle-aged, wearing a flannel shirt and jeans, mummified by the dry air but recognizable. The same man from Lisa's mirror. Lisa backed away, pulled out her phone, and called 911. She reported finding a body, gave the location. The dispatcher kept her on the line until police arrived 20 minutes later. Lisa explained she'd been driving past and saw the abandoned property, decided to explore. She didn't mention the phantom passenger. The police investigated. The truck's registration traced to a driver named Robert Mitchell, reported missing 6 years earlier. He'd been driving from Washington to North Dakota, vanished somewhere in Montana. His truck had never been found, until now. The police determined Robert had pulled off the highway, possibly experiencing mechanical issues or medical problems. He'd driven to this abandoned property, maybe looking for help, and died in his truck. The barn had hidden the vehicle from passing traffic and aerial searches. The property's owner had died shortly after Robert, and the farm had sat empty. No one had any reason to check the barn. Robert Mitchell had been sitting there for 6 years, undiscovered. Lisa gave her statement and was allowed to leave. She drove back to Highway 2 and continued her route to North Dakota. She checked her mirrors. The passenger seat was empty in both reality and reflection. The man was gone. Lisa completed her delivery and drove back to Spokane. She told anyone the full truth of how she'd found Robert Mitchell. The official story, that she'd randomly decided to explore an abandoned property, was impossible but more believable than the truth. Lisa knows that Robert's ghost, or echo, or whatever it was, had been trying to get home for 6 years. He died on the highway, and his spirit had been hitching rides with passing trucks, visible only in mirrors, trying to guide someone to his body. Lisa happened to be the driver who noticed him, who followed his directions, who finally brought him home. She still drives solo, still runs Hannah routes, but now Lisa always checks her mirrors carefully. Not for traffic or obstacles, but for passengers who shouldn't be there. Because the highways are full of the dead who can't rest, spirits trapped in the endless loop of their final journeys. And sometimes, if you're paying attention, you can help them find their way home. Even if they're only visible in the reflection of a mirror, existing in the space between what's real and what's remembered, waiting for someone kind enough to follow where they point and give them the peace they've been searching for across years of silent, patient haunting.